What up, what up? NFL Week 5 was crazy, and we've got to talk about the biggest takeaways because this was a very, very informative week. I think we learned a lot about the identity of a lot of NFL franchises here, and we have a better picture of what the playoff race is going to look like, who's going to fight for it, who's maybe not going to fight for it. And so we just got to hop right into it. We got to discuss everything that went down, starting with Thursday night. Chicago went in and beat the Washington Commanders after I think everybody, myself included, counted Chicago out completely. 40-20. The Commanders are reality setting in. They're back to reality. They're just a mediocre team. They've got a lot of potential with a lot of young pieces. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, with Sam Howell. You know, there are pieces. And we haven't even talked about the defensive side of the ball, which we know that front seven, that defensive line is very solid. A couple good cornerbacks out there as well. And honestly, this year can already be marked as a success for Washington because they realized Sam Howell can be our guy. They're seeing a lot of flashes from their young core. Now, the rest of the season is just about fighting, gaining experience, really pushing through adversity to prove what kind of football franchise they really want to be. Chicago, they went out and said, hey, we're not going to be the laughingstock of the NFL completely. We went out, showed some poise, they showed some desire, some passion to actually be out on the field. Now, they've moved away from Chase Claypool, which seems to have helped. And so now we can focus really on the offense. DJ Moore, especially, 230 yards is crazy. We got to see what Justin Fields can do, and they got to keep building. But honestly, not bad from the Commanders this year either. Sam Howell with 388 passing yards. That led the day, I believe, of the week. Jacksonville at Buffalo. It was in London, and Jacksonville had been there all week. They had 2 back-to-back games in London, so they really had the home field advantage. Jacksonville came out on top. Jacksonville really showed themselves today. Trevor Lawrence had a great day for himself. 25 of 37 with 315 yards, 1 touchdown. Travis Etienne, 136 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. Calvin Ridley also went over 100 yards on the day. A great show out from their offense. Really a great defensive game as well. You know, slowing down what has been an explosive Bills offense over the past 3 weeks. So, what I learned is the Jaguars are for real. They are going to be playoff contenders. Not even just contenders. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to be fighting for that spot in the AFC Championship game. They're going to be a good 4 seed probably, right? We're going to see a good battle between, the Bills, it looks like the Jaguars now pushing out the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Dolphins. So, don't forget about the Chiefs. So, the Bills, just an off game, really. I'm not even worried about it. No sweat. They just got to find a little bit more of a rushing game. Houston at Atlanta. It was low scoring most of the game. But there was some fight from both teams there at the end. Desmond Ridder, he had to go out and do his thing. 329 yards for him. C.J. Stroud had another great game as well, though. The Texans are an up-and-coming team. I think they found their franchise guy. Again, I think this is an absolute win of the season for the Texans. Now this year, again, is just gaining that experience, going out, proving to themselves that they can be winners. Really just taking pride in their team. Atlanta, they still got to figure out what they're doing. I feel like they don't really have an identity on offense, and that's keeping them at this very, very slightly below average. I think I already have addressed them as the definition of mediocre, and that's what they're going to be until they can figure out what they really want to do on offense. And I think first off, they got to put more trust in Desmond Ridder. Really understand, hey, this is his team. Let him and his playmakers go out and make plays. Bijan Robinson, we know the kid can ball. We got to run the football more with Bijan. But we've got to figure out what we're doing with Kyle Pitts, with Drake London, all the above. We really just need to solidify an offensive identity, and that's really going to push us to the next level. Arthur Smith just hasn't done that yet, and I don't think he will this year. Carolina and Detroit. Detroit came out and they put on a show on both sides of the ball. Aiden Hutchinson had himself a day. Oh my goodness. That one-handed pick was nasty. Go watch it if you haven't. Bryce Young, too many interceptions, but he threw the ball around. The Lions are legit. This is what we learned. The Lions, especially if David Montgomery can stay hot, they're not going to be fighting for the conference championship maybe, but they're going to be a legit playoff team. You probably don't want to face week 1. But Carolina, they still are a long way to go. And Bryce Young still hasn't solidified himself as a legit elite quarterback of the future, in my heart at least. And so we still got to progress on that. We still got to get Bryce Young comfortable. Tennessee at the Colts. I mean, D-Hop still got it, my boy. Zach Moss says he's not letting go of this job real easy. He's looked good. But the biggest thing we learned is that Anthony Richardson just can't stay healthy. And that's going to be the major concern for his entire career, it seems. They've got to limit his hits. They've got to build an offense that allows him to, kind of like a Lamar Jackson. Of course, he missed a lot of games last season. But the Ravens really built a good offense where he can use his legs and it can be a great asset to the offense, but he doesn't take a ton of hits. And Anthony Richardson and the Colts really have to figure something out like that, or it's just not going to look good. Titans, I think they just proved that they're not a playoff team. They can really hit, but they can really miss as well. They're just too inconsistent. They just don't quite have the defense that is necessary for an elite playoff team. I don't like the build of this team at all. I don't see them going much anywhere. New York at the Dolphins. That Giants offense is horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. And speed kills. I think the Dolphins just legitimized themselves as a top contender as well, even after getting kind of handled pretty easily by the Bills last week. The only thing is Tua has to clean it up. This team is scary. This offense is elite. But Tua has to avoid the mental errors. Too many interceptions, too many turnovers, too many times where he just misses receivers because he's trying to do too much. He needs to slow the game down. He needs to watch a little bit more tape. Whatever he's got to do, Mike McDaniel is the guy to do it. And I have full confidence that by come playoff time, Tua will be ready, barring, he can stay healthy. But, man, they're scary. They are terrifying on offense. Their defense just has to figure itself out. Giants just aren't a very good team. I think that's very clear to everyone. The Dolphins are scary. New Orleans at the Patriots. This was a terrible blowout for Pats fans. Hard to watch. Mac Jones pulled again in the fourth quarter. It was 31-0. And Belichick said he's still the starter. So that's good and all for him. But I think he also just proved that he is not the quarterback of the future for the Patriots. And pretty much everything needs to be rebuilt in New England. Everything. Start from ground zero. The Saints, they bounced back nicely, had themselves quite a game. Really got to just keep building on this. I think I'm just not sold on the Saints as a legit contender, right? But they're going to have a good season. They'll probably find their ways in the playoffs, of course, with considering how bad that division is. But the Saints, they just keep getting better over the past few weeks, and I hope that continues. I really expect it to, especially with Kamara back, Jamal Williams is coming back. That defense looks better and better every week, and so, I mean, it's good to watch the Saints. What did we learn from the Ravens-Steelers? The Ravens came in, had a lead pretty much the entire game, and lost it there at the end. We learned that we've got to get some wide receiver help for Lamar Jackson. 6 drop passes. 6, that's just unacceptable. Lamar was trying to do not as much with his feet. He's trying to limit his hits, like we were just talking about. There wasn't that much help. 6 drops, a lot of botched routes if you watch the game. And, man, just get Lamar some help. He did look bad at the end. He was trying to force a lot, he was trying to do too much. And that's where, Lamar's still a young quarterback. He has to understand, hey, you know what? We don't need to force it. We just got to go out there and do our thing. Trust our guys. But that's really hard to do when there's so many drops, so many miscommunications, so many unforced errors. It was just bad. And the Steelers, we learned that offense is still horrible. They really showed up there at the end, but it's still horrible. But this defense is legit and can carry them to several wins. You just got to see what kind of extent that is. Because, again, it was just a poorly played game by Baltimore as well. And they still, it was close. Philadelphia and LA, what a game. That was a fun one as well. Jalen Hurts finally had a good game this year. Again, he still had that interception with only 1 touchdown, so not a great ratio. But they got the job done. Jalen Hurts showed up when he needed to. A lot of third down scrambles turning into first downs. He played his game. He looked good. The Rams, I think, just proved themselves to be a good team again, right? I don't think a lot of people expected the Rams to be great, especially after what last year brought us. So the Rams are a good team. Again, they might find themselves in a wild card position. I'm not sure. I wouldn't count on it, but I could see it. I could see it. Again, I think the Niners really just separated themselves, and we'll talk about this here at the end. Cincinnati finally picked up a dub. It was against Arizona, who we just learned is just looking for some respect. They're trying to be a respectable franchise, and you know what? We can show some respect for that. Even as a Cardinals fan, I prefer probably they just tank, get the #1 pick, because we ain't gonna do anything else anyways. But Carolina's got us a beat right now, and they're probably gonna hold on to that lead for a while. Because we actually look like we can play football. But it was good to see Joe. Yeah, Jamar Chase, almost 200 yards receiving. 192. He had himself a day. A couple touchdowns to go with it. Jamar or Joe, they got their rhythm. Good things are coming. I love to see it. Jets got their revenge against Sean Payton, who just criticized the heck out of Nathaniel Hackett. They got the dub for Hackett. And it was it wasn't a pretty game by either team. A lot of turnovers, a lot of unforced errors, a lot of fumbles. Yikes. But Zach Wilson, he had himself a decent game. Of course, not as great as it was last week, but still almost 200 yards throwing. Breece Hall had himself a day. Again, I think we just learned that the Broncos are a very bad team, and the Jets have a potential to be a good team if they could just have a little bit better of an offense, which just probably isn't going to happen this year. Again, they might find their way sneaking into a playoff spot in the wild card, and I don't think that's out of the question. I think they're really going to fight for it, and it could definitely happen, especially if Aaron Rodgers' recovery is going as well as he says it is on the Pat McAfee show. Kansas City at Minnesota. This was my upset. I picked this one. I picked the Minnesota Vikings to win this game, and they just didn't. I think this is it for the Vikings. I think we learned that they are just not a very good team. They're not as bad as their record says they are, but they're not a good team either. Their days of playing for an NFC Championship game, they might be in the rearview mirror for the time being. Of course, they still got young weapons as Jettas and T.J. Hawkinson, Madison, if you can hold on the football, gosh darn it. But their defense just isn't at the level it was, and Kirk is just not making as many throws as he needs to make, and of course, their running game is just not nearly as good as it was with Dalvin Cook. I don't know why they let him walk. It's not the same. The Vikings they're going to be there. They're still going to hang around, but they're not going to be Super Bowl contenders anymore. Kansas City fought through adversity, found a way to get a win, as they do. They never blow out teams, it seems like, anymore, but they always find a way to win, and that's really all that matters. Travis Kelce, it was good to see him come back to the game and get a touchdown after that ankle injury. That looks scary, honestly. Non-contact injuries, whew, they make you hold your breath for a minute. Dallas at San Francisco. I was hyping this up as the game of the week. Everybody really was, especially this rivalry that the Cowboys and Niners have had historically. I think this was really the game for Dallas to prove to themselves and prove to the world that, hey, we're legit contenders this year. And what a flop. Man, the Niners are just so good. That defense is insane. Brock Purdy is probably a top 15, top 12 quarterback at this point. And when you have Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, I mean, goodness gracious. We don't even need to talk about the defensive side of the ball because we know that they're filled with all pros. I mean, Dak made some plays there at the beginning, some nice throws, but the Niners are too good. The Niners are too good, and the Cowboys just aren't there yet. Maybe next year. Maybe next year, Cowboys fans. But that's what I learned. I learned a lot. I learned that the Niners are really the team to beat. The AFC is still tight, but it's not as tight as we thought it was. There's still some legit teams there. We got to see the Bengals come back. There's a lot of offenses that are just really bad and need some quarterback upgrades, such as the Patriots. Time to enter rebuild mode. Daniel Jones, I don't think really he's the answer in New York, but really New York needs a full rebuild at this point as well. So we learned a lot. I think there was a lot to build on. And I think we really are seeing who's separating themselves from the pack. And we're going to talk about that more in another video. That is all for tonight. I appreciate y'all. Still another fun week in the NFL. And give me your thoughts. Can't wait to hear them.